Welcome everybody to Chatting with Wisdom. And if you're catching the replay, #replay, let us know that you're catching the replay on whatever medium that you are catching today's show. So today we are in Chatting with Wisdom. We are going to be talking with Deborah. And so with Deborah is one of the questions that she asks is, do you find motherhood overwhelming? So Deborah Ann Davis knows exactly how that feels. When she found out she was going to be a mom, Deborah was completely unprepared. She spent the next decade or so worrying about messing up her daughter's life, channeling the skills she had developed, helping her students' parents. It wasn't until her daughter finally reached middle school that Deborah felt an iota of confidence as a mom. You don't have to go through that. Your kids are waiting for you to figure it out. So as a parenting life coach, Deborah's job is to help you recognize what you're doing right and to add supplemental strategies. Her books, How to Keep Your Daughter from Slamming the Door and How to Get Your Happy On, are available everywhere. So join her, and she invites you to join her Facebook group, The Mom Meetup. Raising Confident Girls. You don't have to do it alone. So welcome, Deborah. How are you?
I'm very good. How are you today?
Good. So we were just talking in terms of demographics. And so Deborah said that she is in the North with respect to being in the US. And however, we are in the North with respect to being in Ontario, Canada. So welcome to this fall, gloomy, dreamy kind of weather that we're having. At least I know that we are. So do you guys get that kind of like at this time of the year? Is it lots of rain and gray days?
No, this September, October is bright sunshine. The leaves are changing.
Beautiful.
Everything's bright orange, red, and pink. It hasn't happened yet. Just like an isolated tree here and there is
Okay.
changing colors, but we're starting to get the change coming, and it's bright blue skies and
That's
there's
beautiful. We start our change starts happening for us in August, and so into September and October for us are usually a lot of rain and a lot of gray days. We still have on the rare occasions that we have some sun, is that we do have like the beautiful colors, and the leaves are going to start falling off for us soon. Some of them have started, but like it's not into that complete stage yet. It's like bring in your plants, get everything ready because it's going to start. We're going to start getting frost, all that fun stuff. So now enough about the weather. Let's talk about this healthy parenting. So I was sharing with you that my children are now 25 and 26. Almost 27 is my oldest. And so healthy parenting was definitely something that was always something to strive for, to try and make things easier and better, not just for me, but for the kids as well, right?
Yes, absolutely. When I'm a high school teacher and a middle school teacher, so I knew teenagers. So when we had our only daughter, when she was first a baby, I was thinking, wow, I'm going to screw up her life because I don't know what to do until she reaches middle school. I knew once she hit middle school, I'd hit my stride and everything would be good. But I was so worried about screwing her up before then.
And you really don't, do you? Like that's
No. For all you moms who are worried, think about all those moments where you look at your child and you go, wow, that is a great kid. That's because you really haven't screwed it up. I mean, we worry about it because, motherhood's an isolating experience. We're in our own homes doing our own things and looking over our shoulder at everybody else that we think is doing great, except for us. I mean, I thought that I was the only mom who wasn't holding it together. I had two sister-in-laws who were pregnant the same time I was, and they seemed to be doing great. So I just thought, oh, it's just me and my poor daughter. But she's a great person. I actually did a great job. And most people are doing a much better job than they give themselves credit for.
yeah.
So I'm just saying, look at your kid. Your kid knows how to walk and talk. Who taught them that? You did. Your kid knows how to reason and think. You did that. So you're doing a better job than you think.
And that's one of those things that are like is really, really hard for us to be able to do because we have this expectation that our children are going to do exactly, they're going to, everything's like, um, all these milestones, everything's going to be hit in the exact spot or in that exact moment, and everything's going to be exactly the same. And so like I know that with I was very fortunate that my first child was, he was easy. He was fully toilet trained by the time that he was 2, and that was because he hated having wet or dirty diapers from the time that he was an infant. So like it was so easy for him to be trained. So when we started, it was like, no, I don't want to wear, like even wearing pull-ups to go in the car, it was like, no, I don't want to wear pull-ups. Well, then you definitely can't pee in those underwear until you get home, right? So until we get to whatever destination that we're getting to. And so, and he was fully trained by the age of 2. And then I had his little brother who, he was going to start school at the age of 4, and I thought, there's no way that this kid is going to be toilet trained before he starts school. He's going to school in pull-ups. Like, I don't even know what else to do. Right? He did manage to be not toilet or to be toilet trained before he got to junior kindergarten, but it was like, it was pretty scary as to whether or not he was even going to make it. So, but they do, and they come along and they're different, and each child is different, and
Exactly.
that's something that is also very challenging. So us comparing um John to Jeremy is like not the same, right? So like
Mhm.
you've got these 2 completely different kids. Their personalities are different, their skill set is different, their abilities are different, and so, and it's just so important for us to be able to remember those differences, isn't it?
And when people say, why can't you be more like your brother or something like that? Really, what they're saying, which the kid is never going to tune into, but what they're saying is, why aren't I able to do what I was doing with your brother with you? Why isn't it, why can't I figure it out?
Yeah.
So, but the kid hears blame.
Yes, absolutely. Like it's
Mhm.
all your fault.
Yes.
So is and like I had that comparison. So I had one kid who's very academic and sports was not a thing for him. And then I had the other one who sports was his thing, academics was not. And so, and it was like, so the one felt completely incompetent because he could not beat his brother in running a race. And while his brother was like, okay, well, I'm pretty stupid, like I can't even figure out these things, right? So they had these 2 different things, even though those are not the way that, that's not what we had taught them, but like that's how they perceived everything that was going on, right? So
I'm just going to bring this full circle back to what I was saying about moms. When, we compare ourselves to other moms and we think, compared to them, I am so much lower. And everybody does that. And the best way to not do that, because that kind of behavior is what we're modeling for our kids. Like, you looking at somebody else and saying, wow, they're so much better.
mhm,
The thing to say is that I'm unique. What I do is based on my experiences and my skill set and my knowledge and my creativity. And I'm unique, and I'm not going to be like all those other mothers. I know that I was I was a very quirky mom, and my daughter was delighted in that. So after I realized that she got a kick out of me being an unusual mom, then I I stopped holding on to trying to be like the other moms. But I'm a science geek. I'm a science teacher. I'm the person who, when we go for a walk, I can name all the plants along the walk. And so when we go someplace with their friends, I'd be going, "Ooh, look," and their friends would be looking at me like, "Ooh, what are you doing?" But they'd always come back for more,
yeah,
because there was, love and laughter in our household. And so I stopped worrying about it way past when I should have stopped worrying about it. I should have stopped worrying about it when they placed her in my arms in the hospital.
yeah.
Instead, in the hospital, I was there, apologizing for all the mistakes I was going to be making. She didn't seem to care. She fell asleep. She seemed all right with it, but I
Well,
was
and
lost.
And it's really challenging sometimes for us to be able to try and figure out like, well, what's going to work for one kid and what's going to work for the next kid and that kind of thing. So I was on the parent council when my children were little, and my kids are avid readers, like including my one who has dyslexia. And so he has dyslexia and dysgraphia, but yet he was still an avid reader. It would take him a lot longer to read a book, but he had learned over the years how to be able to still manage to be able to read. And so we were
He
in a
must be
parent
a
council.
brilliant person, really.
What's that?
He must be brilliant.
He's absolutely brilliant. He really
Yeah.
is. And some days he spins our head because it's like, okay, we need you to like, but
Mhm.
he's absolutely brilliant. And so but we were in parent council. And so it was like this whole strategy of like how to be able to get our boys to read. And I've only had boys, I didn't have girls, how to be able to get our boys to read. And what are some of the strategies and what are some of the things that we can be doing? And I'd be sitting at the table going, they just do. My boys just do. Like it takes 15 minutes to drive to town from where we live. And so my boys would both bring a book and they would read the book on the way to town. Like that was just, they would grab a book on the way to town. It was only 15 minutes, but they would read on their way there. We would read before bed. And then when they got older, then they read to themselves before they went to bed. And like all these things. And it's like, well, I don't know. They just did. I never had an issue with that. So much so that my oldest one is he was reading and comprehending at a grade 8 level in grade 2. And so we had so both my boys are very brilliant. And so we had gone to the park, and he's the one that's not physically active. He like that sports is not his thing. And so I remember going to the park, and I went over and I took the book from him and I said, if I ever catch you reading again today, you're going to be grounded. And this little old lady was going by and she's like, oh my goodness, dear, you should never punish them for reading. And I'm like, but I need him to move his body. We're at the park. I need him to move. Right. So
When my daughter was little, I wanted her to become a reader. And so we've taped, this is a strategy for you moms out there who want to turn your kids into readers. We taped a piece of notebook paper to the door, one of the doors coming off of the kitchen. And every time she read something, we'd put the title on there. And I didn't care what she read. She could read a comic book, she could read a book, she could read a pamphlet, whatever. It was just to get her started. And as soon as she filled the entire page, I would take her to a bookstore or a library, and she could sit and read there and get a few more titles, and then she could bring a bunch home. And then we'd keep putting them up there on the thing. So we ended up having a list that went all the way down to the floor. But when she was in the 3rd grade, her teacher called me in for a conference because apparently my daughter was reading while she was supposed to be doing other things. So she was holding the book open under her desk and reading, right? And so it was the reason why the teacher recognized this is because they would all line up to go to like gym, and she would be sitting there not realizing anybody had gotten out of their seat yet. So I came in and I said to her, I talked to my daughter at home about it. And I said to the teacher, tell her she can only read at the carpet. They had a little carpet by the books, and not at her desk. So like 3 weeks later, the teacher called me back in again because it was still going on. And we opened up her desk, and she had like 10 books open inside the desk that she had shoved in there. So yeah, I turned her into like super reader, and we had a hard time shutting it off,
yeah.
It was just something you had to deal with because kids don't understand moderation. They understand instant gratification.
Yeah.
So.
And that was one of the things. And for my youngest one, the one who has dyslexia, that was one of his coping strategies. When things would become overwhelming, he was allowed to pick up the book, and he was allowed to like tune out everything else. He'd put in earbuds, and then he would just tune in to whatever it is that he had going on, because he also had central auditory challenges. And so for him, it was like, hey, drown on everything else out and focus on whatever it is. And so he'd bring a book, so that would actually allow him to be able to tune back into what it is that he needed to be doing. So there's lots of ways of being able to like help kids tune into the different things. It's about finding what's going to work for them. And I know that that's a huge challenge for teachers when you've got, like, I don't know how many kids in your classrooms
Yeah.
that you have, right? Like we can have upward to 30 kids in our classrooms
Yeah. Here too.
here, right? So like it's crazy because like how do you try and tune in to like all of the kids and all the needs that they have based on um the size of the classrooms and what it is that's going on and how to be able to do that. And
Well,
so as oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's something you learn how to do. It's sort of like trial by fire. You thrown into the classroom, you learn how to do that. You're as a teacher, you're so focused on the lesson plan and making sure that you do what the school wants you to do and all that stuff. And then you get back your first homeworks and your first tests and you see where they are, if they're getting it or not getting it. And you say, oh, I got to change something here. And then you start paying attention to who the kids are. And after a while, you learn that you need to watch them when they're coming in the door because they are broadcasting who they are that day, right then.
Yeah.
The way they're interacting with each other, the way they put their books down, the way they slump in their chair, the way they're attentive, how they're looking around. I mean, you see it, which this turned out to be my superpower as a teacher. I knew who my kids were by the time I called the class to order. And each day it was a different set coming in the door, depending on how their day went or what the weather was like, or if that girl smiled at them or not, you know. and so that's what I bring to the table with what I do now. But I just want to do, shameless plug here, but me and two other educators have put together a series, 4-part series called Talk About Teens. And 3 of them are already out. They're on, you can go find them on my YouTube channel. But the 4th one is on October 23rd, I believe. It's whatever that Saturday is that weekend. It's at 11 a.m. on 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Okay.
And that one's called First Quarter Check-In. We set that one up specifically to be after the first report cards come out so people can learn how to use them as tools for assessment and to leverage them and not use them as a reflection of if I have a good kid or a bad kid, or if, good grades mean I'm a good parent and bad grades mean I'm a bad parent. Bless you.
Thank you.
That's what that one's for. But the one we did this summer was on learning styles. So if you want to identify your child's learning style, these things are free. You can look them up. You can, or just send me an email and I'll give it to you. But the point about it is you can identify your child's learning style. And once you know your child's learning style, which is a huge deal because learning styles are the way we take in information, it's the way we process information, it's the way we understand the world, it's the way we do relationships. It's really important, especially if your learning style is different than your child's, because that's a whole world set up of surprise expectations. You think that your parent is going to act one way and they respond a different way, or you think your kid is going to do this and they do that instead, and people go, well, where did that come from? And it causes all this conflict based on misunderstanding. For example, like if you have a visual learner and you're an audio learner and you say to your child, go, I've used this example before, but go take out the garbage when that show is done, then the child says, sure. But hours later, the trash hasn't been taken out yet, because for you, saying it is enough for it to be processed. But for that child who's a visual learner, it goes right out the window when you leave. So if you just take a little sticky note, put it on the table in front of them and say garbage, the visual learner will see that and say, I got to take the garbage out. So there's ways to avoid conflict just by understanding who your child is. Plus, when you're doing distance learning or distance education, if you are one type of learner, then you're expecting your child to do what you do when you learned. But that may not be the way they learn. So again, understanding them will help you with that transition. Plus, if they have a teacher who has a different teaching style than their learning style, they may be having difficulty that is not necessary. So
Yeah.
this is the Talk About Teens thing has all these different strategies of what you can do if you have a kinesthetic learner, if you have an auditory learner, if you have a visual learner.
And that's great. And I apologize for the sound while you were talking, is that I had actually went and searched for your YouTube channel. So I just plunked it in there. Well, apparently your videos start playing immediately. So,
I don't know how to shut that off.
so, which is okay. That's not an issue. It was like, except for that I wasn't expecting it. And it was like, oh no, this is happening. But I did put your link for your YouTube channel on in the comments so that people can have access to that, because it's not in the description. I actually went to check to see if it was in one of your like in the description part of it, and it wasn't. So so I apologize for the interruption while you were speaking. But it's but yeah, so like it's just incredible about being able to have those cues, right? So like, and when we actually pay attention to our kids, like we actually know what the cues are and what it is that's going on. So like, even like I said, using my my oldest one for the example of like, he did not like to have any messes in his diaper at all from the time that he was an infant, and that's just who he was. And so we went through way more diapers than most normal people do, because like he did not like to be wet at all. So if he or dirty. And so, and for whatever reason, this kid right from birth had this thing that he would never, if he peed, then we needed to change his diaper, because he would cry that he needed to be changed, and we would no sooner change him than he would have a poop, and it would be like, could you not do that like 2 minutes ago? Like, but it was like, and which is one of the reasons why it was so easy to toilet train him, because he did not like that dirtiness for him at all. Whereas his brother, he could sit in it for hours. If we didn't notice, if there wasn't a smell or we didn't see the saggy diaper, he didn't care. Right. So like, it's just about their, what works for them and what their sensories are and what it is that's going on. And so like, even something as simple as the auditory sounds, right? So like I had said, my youngest one has had central auditory challenges. And one of the things that he said, and I didn't even clue into it, right? So like, I always tried to be proactive as much as I could, because I tried to learn as much as I possibly could. But he was probably about 7 or 8, maybe 9 or 10. Like, I don't even think that he was even 9 or 10. And so he was with his dad. I called his dad and said, like, they were at a hockey game together. And so I called up my husband and said, hey, can I talk to Case for a second? So then I handed the phone off. He handed the phone off to Casey. And then I asked him something that was really important to me, that I needed the answer for whatever reason. I don't know why I would have needed to interrupt the game, but it was something that was like pressing. I needed to get the answer right away before the game started. And so he said, what? I can't hear you. Why would you get the person who can't hear with background noises to answer the question? I'm handing the phone back to my dad, right? It would be like, ding dong, like, really, like, seriously. But like, that was one of the things that is really important for. And so then after that is that I would never, then I was more aware, and I would be remembering that, like, okay, but it was something that I had learned and taught him over the years, is to advocate for himself, because he had so much challenges in school with learning. And it's like, well, if something's not working, you need to let us know, because we're not going to know that it's not working. And same as the teacher's not going to know that it's not working. So he attended all of his IEP meetings, and I would have different teachers or different principals over the years that would say, okay, well, does your kid doesn't need to be here? Yeah, my kid does need to be here. He's in the classroom. I'm not going to be in the classroom. Yeah, well, he's only 7. I don't care if he's like 2. Like, he knows what it is that's working for him.
Yes.
I'm not going to know.
Yes. I had a student who was hearing impaired, and he would shut off his hearing aid all during school because the noises of the chairs scraping on the floor sounded like cymbals in his ears. So I went to a tennis club and I got them to give me their dead balls, and I spent an evening cutting them open so I could stick them on the bottom of the feet of the chairs. And then I told my class it was because I couldn't stand the noise when they all decided to push their chairs back. So he would turn his hearing aid on in my room and shut it off in the other rooms. And then some of the other teachers started doing it too. So I mean, you need to know who your kids are.
Yeah.
So you
And
can
and
help
now
them.
that's a standard in all of our classrooms, right? So like all of our classrooms have something underneath. And usually it's the tennis balls because I think that's the cheapest.
Mhm.
And so that's a standard. And but that's actually very interesting. I would have never paid attention or realized that, right? So
For me, I'm a visual learner, and I had no idea how important it is for me to watch people's mouths. But when I got together with my husband, when he puts his elbows on the table and he talks and he gestures, I can't see his mouth. And I had a hard time hearing him. And I couldn't understand what was going on. That it would be like, I don't know, I felt this cloud in my head the minute his hands went up like that. And I finally figured out it's because I'm a visual learner and I need to see the mouth. I can't explain why seeing the mouth makes me hear better, but I do know that's what it is. And I just accept it. I mean, because the thing is to tell our kids, my way is not better than your way, and your way is not better than my way. It's different.
yeah,
Different is not good. It's not bad. It's unique. Unique
yeah.
and different are just different. And it would be so boring if we all were the same. My family's racially mixed, and we were at a Thanksgiving dinner, and I was sitting at a children's table because my daughter was like 3 or 4. So a little square card table, right? I'm sitting here, my daughter's over here, my nephew, she's like 3. My nephew, who's in the 7th grade, is over here, and my other nephew is across from me, and he's 3. So my daughter and my 7th grade nephew are both mixed, but my nephew across from me was black. So we all sat down, and he put his plate down, and we're all getting ready to eat. And he looks at my daughter, and he looks at his cousin, and he looks back and forth, and he starts going like this, and he leans over to me and he goes, "They have the same face," which is really being racially alert, observant, but I didn't want to go that route. So I said, "Well, you all have the same face. You're all Davises, and so you have a family resemblance." He goes, "No, they're like this. I'm like this." Talking about skin color. So my 7th grade nephew literally fell out of his chair laughing. I said, keeping a straight face, to my little nephew, "Isn't it great that we're not all the same? It would be so boring if we all looked alike, wouldn't it be?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he starts eating. And I look at my daughter, and she's just shoveling food in her mouth. And I'm looking at the one on the floor, going, "Can you get up now?"
And it's just so interesting how like kids have this alertness and things that we don't necessarily pay attention to, or that and maybe we should be paying more attention to some of the things that they're alert to. But it's just so important for us to be able to try and figure out, like, what is it that makes them tick? How do they change, and what is it that they're seeing? And
I just want to interrupt you for my favorite soapbox here. The word should needs to be taken out of all mothers' vocabulary.
everybody's vocabulary.
Because that word comes along with guilt and blame and shame. So it would be nice if we could learn about those things, but it's not like we should learn about those things. It would be nice if we could learn about those things. And
Yeah,
I don't mean
absolutely.
to correct you like this, but
No, and that's
the
okay,
word
because
I
when
struggled with.
and
That's my inner talk is, "Oh,
yeah,
you should have done that sooner."
yes.
Right? You should
And
have
I
said.
completely understand, because those are the things that I do when I hear it from someone else, that it's like we need to remember, right? So like
So
those
that's
are the
why I'm
things
saying
that,
it for your audience,
yeah.
because all you people out there who have anxiety, you need to kick that word should to the curb, because there is no should. You are doing the best you can right now with what your situation is. So
Yes.
cut yourself some slack and realize that you're doing better than you think. Can you improve it? Yeah. Everybody can always improve what they're doing, where they're at right now, always, every time, everywhere. Is that in your best interest to improve? Well, you got to keep your balance. You have to keep your balance with life and with your self-care and definitely get rid of shame and blame and all that. And when your kids do things like get low grades on the report card, you don't say, "Oh, you should have done better." You say, "Okay, this report card shows where you're strong and where you need to strengthen. So I'm going to help you. Don't worry about this. I got your back. We're going to get you caught up and you're going to be just fine." Not the "you should have done your homework. You should have focused. You
Yeah.
should have studied better for that test." Right? So should is a evil, bad word, bad, bad, bad. And we're trained to use it. Our society trains us to use it. The commercials on TV train you to use it. You should get a new car. You should buy this insurance. You should get this medicine. I mean, don't you remember the days where they didn't advertise medicines on TV so that you would go tell your doctor what you want them to prescribe for you?
Yeah. So, and that was one of the things that my dad used to do all the time. Well, do you think that that medication would be good for me? Well, I think if it was good for you, the doctor would have already figured it out. But like, we can
Yes,
ask if you really want to, but like, you already have this medication. Why do we need to change it?
that's right.
So, right. So, but yeah, it's definitely there. And thank you for correcting me because I did not pay attention to that. And it's something that I do try and be cognizant of because of the fact that that is something. One of the things that I always say to people as well is that you stop shoulding on yourself. Right. So it's one of those things. And so thank you, because I definitely did not pay attention to it in my language. So
For
because
me, it's a familial habit. I definitely do it.
yeah.
And I am on the road to not using it, but I'm not there yet. But I'm gonna be.
And obviously neither am I. So, but one of the things is to be able to, like you said, is being able to pay attention to what are some of the things that that can be changed. And I really like that one part that you said is, um, do you have to change it, or is this something that is this the right time to change it? And sometimes it's not. Right?
Exactly.
So, like, don't rock the boat sometimes. Sometimes we need to stay exactly where we are at this particular moment. And being able to change too many things at once is also not helpful, right?
Right.
So that's also really important for us to be able to do. And one of the things that I always tell people as well is take what you need and leave the rest. And especially in parenting, that was one of the things that I had to learn. It was a very hard lesson to learn because I was raised with, you need to make sure that they're doing A, B, and C and doing all of these things. And it's like, okay, but that doesn't resonate for me. I don't really like that one. It doesn't feel good for me, or it doesn't feel good for my child. So
Mhm.
I would do one thing with one child and something different with the other child because that's just the way that they were wired. And so a really good example of that is that, and like I said, my youngest one, we taught him how to be more vocal and express himself. And some days it's like, oh my God, why did I do that?
I don't need to talk.
But he had
Why? Why?
he was running out in the grass, and I use this example often because he was out running in the grass in his sock feet, and my mom came over and he was wearing his white socks, and my mom comes in, and my mom comes over and she says, hey Case, get back inside, you don't have any shoes on, you're running around in your sock feet, you're getting your socks all dirty. And he stopped very politely and said, Mamere, you don't do my laundry, my mom does, and she doesn't care that I'm running around in my sock feet. And so it was like, he wasn't rude, he wasn't belligerent, he was very polite about it. And it was like, and my mom comes in, she's like, he told me, and I'm said, well, he's right. Like, I don't care. It really makes no difference to me that he's running around in his socks feet. Like, you can usually buy socks a dime a dozen. It's really not that big a deal. You buy them in a great big huge bag, and they wear out just as fast as whether or not you buy the expensive ones. So like, it doesn't really make any difference. So, and he was right, but he was able to learn how to be able to express that. And that was something that, as coming from a parent, like my mom telling me, well, you should be making him do all these things. And I was like,
There's that word again, right?
right. So it's
I'm
like,
gonna,
no,
I'm gonna
like,
piggyback on what you're saying because one of the hardships of being a parent is all the stuff on the outside telling you what you should be doing.
Yeah.
and all these well-meaning things. In my family, there are 3 new babies from over the last 6 months, 3 new babies, right? And one of the young moms told me that she's feeling the pressure of people telling her, you should do this with your newborn, you should do that with your newborn, right? And you're supposed to be blocking all that out exterior stuff and being with your baby.
Yeah.
You have the instincts that you need to raise that child. And you don't need to be cluttering your mind and your emotions with the instincts that other people use for raising their child, because that was their bond and their special relationship. And the other thing is, remember that when experienced moms are looking at young moms, they feel anxiety because they remember the anxiety they had when
Yeah.
they were a young mom. And especially the new grandmothers, they're like, oh, I don't want my daughter suffering the way I did. How do I fix that? And they're like being helicopter grandmothers to their own daughters because
Yeah.
they want it to be better. And the way you handle that is you say, you know, Mom, I'm talking new mommy to veteran mommy. You know,
Yeah.
Mom, I think that it's okay to let me do the things that I do when you're not here, because I'm capable of taking care of this stuff my own way. So it's okay. You can relax. We're going to be fine. And
Yeah.
all I need you to do is to love the baby and love me. But don't worry, everything's going to be all right. So
And
I
that
have
is
my
really helpful.
manual, my how to raise my baby manual. I keep it in my back pocket.
I really wish that that was so true, isn't it? Because there is definitely not a manual.
Oh,
And
no,
so,
here's one.
how to, what is
How
it
to keep
called?
your daughter. Oh, how to keep your daughter from slamming the door.
Oh, that's right.
That's one of the
So,
big ones. But yeah,
but even using some of those techniques are when they're younger, right? So being able to
yes.
be aware of what are some of the things that you need to be doing and how can you um, that you can actually improve and listen and they tell us from the time that they're infants what are their needs are. They tell us from an infant like what is it that they need and what is it that they don't need,
When
right?
my
So
daughter when my daughter was 2, we were driving to daycare. Right? I was teaching, so I was taking her to daycare in the morning. And we went over this hill that went over a railroad track. So the side of the hill had a tree on it, and the way it was set up, the crown of the tree was right next to the highway, not the trunk, right? I mean the road. So
yeah.
we stopped at the top because of a stoplight at the bottom, and I looked over. It was late autumn, so there were no leaves on the tree. And there was this huge hawk sitting right there next to our window. And I was all excited because that's what I do. I see nature. I'm like, look back and look, you can see the hawk. And so the next day we drive over the hill and I point to the tree and I say, remember there was a hawk in the tree yesterday. And the next day I was like, oh, remember there's a hawk. The third time I said, remember there's a hawk. My little 2-year-old in the back seat says, are you going to say that every day we come over? I said, fine. I won't say it anymore. You hear my hurt feelings, right? For my 2-year-old, fine. I won't say it anymore. My 2-year-old says in the back seat, you can say it as many times as you want, Mommy. They are knowledgeable and
They
intuitive
are.
and tuned in at
They
2. So
yes,
yes,
they
you're
definitely
absolutely right. If you pay attention, you know who your child is. My child is not the nature person. She could care less if an almost extinct bird lands on her nose. She could care less, right? But she is a social person. And ever since she was old enough to hold her head up, she looked at other people and she would stare at other toddlers when she was a toddler. And she would lock eyes with 4-year-olds when she was a 4-year-old. Me, I never paid attention to anybody. You're absolutely right. If you look at your child, they are telling you who they are and the grown up they're going to be.
yeah. And it's incredible. And now, like, for the parents who have the younger kids right now, I'm able to look back at, so like I said, like, even though it was a challenge some days with my youngest and how outspoken that he can be, is that, but even as an adult, is that being able to see how loving and how much compassion that both of my boys have, that we don't necessarily see. Like, my dad just recently passed, and you saw that compassion, and you saw the different sides of both of my boys, of like making sure that my mom was okay, and making sure that I was okay, and checking in and doing all these different things as they were processing their own feelings. And it was like, huh, I raised that.
Yes,
Right.
you
So
did. You modeled that. They imitated you. That's them learning from you.
So, and it's incredible. And so for all the moms that are going like, "Oh my God, is my kid ever going to get," right? Because they're not doing or complying the way that we want them to, is being able to take a look at how else can we, like, how can we help them
Mhm.
fit with whatever narrative that we're hoping, because we need them to be paying attention in school, and we need them to to be normal beings of society, because that's as normal can be, right? So, like, because, like, really, what is normal? But like being able to like have those different aspects of like making sure that they're polite, and things like that, right? So being able to like, how can we get them to learn those kinds of things and understand those things, and to be able to do that, right? We have a little girl that comes here, and she spends a lot of time with us, and we talk to her the same way that we would have talked to our boys when they were little. And so she has her own knowledge and the things that she learns with her mom and other people that she's around, but we have different kinds of conversations. We talk about death. We talk about the different things. So here in Canada, we're taught there's lots of things. So tomorrow is a new federal holiday for in memory of the lost children that were in the residential schools. And we talked to her about that kind of thing. And what was really interesting is she's in my kids' stress program. And one of the other kids came in and said, "Hey, this is what's going on Thursday, and it's Orange Shirt Day." And the one little girl talked about the whole reason why they're doing it and those kinds of things. And if we listen and pay attention to what the kids are hearing and talking about, is they're paying attention. They pay attention to all the things that we have going on, and they're listening to you even when you don't think that they're listening to you, and they're learning. And some of those things that you are feeling like you're like trying to beat it into them, trying to get them to understand some of those things, they're getting it. And you just
And
need to be
for those of
patient.
you who have anxious children, they're also watching you. So every time you watch a news broadcast, you go, or something, and you show distress, they don't know what to do with that. They just know something's wrong, and that creates anxiety in them. And the best way for you to deal with those anxieties that you're seeing the symptoms, but you don't know what the source is to ask them, one on one, not like line up your kids and ask them as a group, but one at a time, some quiet time. Say, "So, what do you know about this thing? What have you heard about that thing? What do you know about the virus? What do you know about the way school's being structured? How do you feel about it?" And then they are, and what worries you about that? Let them talk about it. And when they're talking, don't rush in with soothing words. Just
Mhm.
listen. So you say things like, "Hmm, oh, that's interesting," or "I understand." Those kinds of things, and just let them talk. Don't solve. Just let them vent and get it out of them. Because if they are allowed to do that process, they will feel heard and valued. So when you want to talk to them later, another conversation about ways to feel more comfortable, they'll be more receptive to it because they'll know you understand their situation. If
Yeah.
they're talking about their situation and you say, "Well, you know what you can do? This is my problem right here. Is I want to fix things, right?" So I always jump in and say, "Well, you know what you can do?" And that's not the time to do that.
Yeah. So, and that's one of the things that's really helpful. Like, so like I said, I have a kids stress program, And so there is a situation that was that the parents had brought to me that one of the children are actually going through and that they were struggling with. And so it was, and so we actually talked about like, hey, I have this friend, and they have their daughter, and so I fictitiously made up names and said like, this is one of the things that's going on, and then the kids helped to come up with solutions as to how that actually relates, so that when they go back to that particular situation, it's like, oh yeah, this is the same situation that happens. And so then I know that next week the child who we had and it may not be next week, it depends on when the next event or occurrence happens, but this young girl's been with me for a while, and so I know that what's going to happen is that she's going to come back in and she's going to say, hey, you know what happened to me today? And I was able to use the suggestion that this kid had said, or I was able to use the suggestion that this kid had said, and how I was able to like solve the problem. And it's like, yay, me. And then we get to celebrate that, how she was able to problem solve that particular situation. And so it's really helpful for us to be able to help them understand without giving them like all the you must, right? So do this, do this, do this, and that'll solve the problem. But it also gives them the opportunity to be able to talk about how they're feeling about it, right? So it's like, well, how are you feeling about it? And being able to express that. And when this particular child started with my program, wasn't able to express her feelings, and so like now is able to, and will come in and say, this is how I'm feeling, and what's going on. Doesn't always still react the way that we hope that they are going to react, but neither do we sometimes, right? So
right. That's their learning style. That's their path. That's their understanding of the world.
yeah. So it's great. And so I've loved having this conversation, and we can probably talk all day about all
Right.
these different things. And so you have a copy of How to Get Your Happy On, and a free clarity coaching session. So anybody who is interested, so I just put in your email information. So if anybody is interested in reaching out to Deborah and getting more information, I know that when my kids were little and I became a single parent before my husband and I got together, is that it was really helpful for me to be able to have some different strategies on how to be able to cope with it and how to be able to deal with it and how to be able to change the ways that I was looking at things and doing things, because it's very difficult sometimes to be able to know how to be able to flow. And whether you're single or not single, that is irrelevant. We still always need that support, because even when my husband and I got together, then we actually started doing parenting programs together, and so that we could merge our parenting styles, and so that we could actually have something that was cohesive and helpful. So but yeah, so this is great, and we need to have more of these. And so thank you very much for being there for parents to be able to help them. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on before we headed out?
I just want to emphasize that my book, How to Get Your Happy On, if you send me an email, I will definitely send you a free copy of that. So anybody who's listening to this.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much. And so thanks everybody. And if you guys have any questions when you guys come back on, definitely happy to hear you. And for those of you who tune in each week, I will have a new guest with us next week on Chatting with Wisdom. Thanks so much. Bye for now.